All right, everyone. So I was in Florida last month, mostly playing tournaments, but after getting destroyed in those, I ended up coming here to the Big Easy to play some 5-card PLO cash. So let's get into it. First hand of note comes about 30 minutes into the session when I look down at the Ace, King, Queen, 10, 8, single suit in the big blind. Most of the hands here are going to be straddled for $10 on the button, which is the same here. So the small blind, myself, and the middle position player all limp. Over to the cutoff, who makes it 40. Button calls, I call, and another player calls. We're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 10-6-6 rainbow. I check and everyone does the same, so still going 4 ways to a turn. The turn brings another 10, this time the 10 of hearts. I check for deception over to the middle position player who bet 75. Everyone folds over to me, and only one move to make, especially with just under a pot size raise. So I put everything in the middle, and he doesn't waste too much time before tossing his cards into the muck. So we get a decent pot here in the early going. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at the King 7 6 5 5 double suited on the button. This time I'm the $10 straddle. Over to the middle position player who limps. Cutoff does the same. I check my option. We're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down Ace 8-3 with 2 spades. Both players check over to me. I bet 20 and both players call, so we're still going 3 ways to a turn. The turn brings a King of Hearts, now giving us a pair of kings as well as a backdoor flush draw to go along with our nut flush draw. Both opponents check to me, and I don't mind taking it down here, so I bet 60. The middle position player folds, but the cutoff makes the call, so we're going heads up to a river. The river brings in the Jack of Hearts for the backdoor flush, so we make the flush, although it's not the one we wanted. When my opponent checks here, I'm just trying to think if I can get called by worse, and possibly maybe if he has Broadway on the river, but I didn't really think so. These non-nut flushes in PLO 5 don't really mean as much as they do in PLO 4. So I decided to check it back and I turn it over and we're good. So take down another pot here in the early going. A couple orbits after the previous hand, I look down at the Ace, Queen, Jack 5 deuce, double suited on the button, and I am the straddle again for the $10. There are 3 limps. I check my option. We're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes down King 7-4 with 2 clubs, so we flop another nut flush draw. Over to the cutoff who bets 40. I make the call and everyone else folds, so we're going heads up to a turn. The turn brings in the front door flush with a 5 of clubs. This time my opponent slows down and checks. I definitely don't want to give him a cheap river card here to draw to a full house, so I bet 115 and he thinks a bit and makes the call, so we're going heads up to a river. The river doesn't change anything with a 9 of diamonds. My opponent once again checks. And I want to continue telling the story here. A lot of people in PLO 5 are going to bet the nut blocker, so I'm hoping that he's going to think the same when I bet 250. He looks a little curious and counts out some chips, but eventually tosses a card into the muck. So we don't win the big one, but happy to take down another pot here. About 30 minutes later, look down at the Ace, Queen, Jack 10, 8 double suited onto the gun in a straddled pot. The small blind limps. Big blind makes it 30. I make the call, and there are 2 calls behind, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes down Queen 9-7 with 2 spades, so pretty monstrous flop for us with top pair, nut flush draw, and a wrap. I bet 65, hoping we can get some action. The middle position player has exactly 65. He calls it off, and everyone else folds, so we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings an 8 of diamonds. River brings a 6 of clubs, so we have the nuts. My opponent doesn't look too happy about it, and he ends up turning over pocket 9s for the flopped set, and we're going to take this one down here. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at one of the nicest hands in PLO 5, Ace, King, Queen, Jack 10, double suited in the hijack. This time there's no straddle on. Everyone folds to me. I make it 20, and there are 3 callers, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes out 8-6-4 rainbow. The small blind quickly bets 70. Everyone folds over to me, and I was thinking of ways to talk myself into a call here, but the only card I'm going to really like on the turn is a 9. That being said, if the flop was 9-6-4, would you guys call here in 5 card? I don't really play 5 card as much, but obviously the 9 being the pivot card, there would be, 8, 10, Jack, Queen, King. That's going to give me quite a bit of outs going into the river. But as such, I decided to fold, and the small blind's going to take it down here. My table ended up breaking shortly after. Took me about an hour to get into a new table. I rebuy in for 400. We're on the button when we look down at the 10-9-8-7-6 single suited. I'm the $10 straddle. There are 3 limpers, and we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 5-4-3 with 2 spades. The small blind doesn't waste too much time before betting 40. Over to a middle position player who calls. And here with the nuts, obviously with the flush and straight redraw, really targeting the middle position player as he's most likely on a draw, and I just make it 200. Small blind calls for less. The middle position player just decides to put everything in the middle, I of course call it off, and we're going 3 ways to a run out. The turn brings an ace of diamonds. River brings another ace, this time the ace of hearts. So definitely didn't want to see the board pair, but I end up turning over my hand for the side pot, and the middle position player turns over the ace deuce of spades. So pretty much had a hand that I put him on. The small blind ends up turning over his hand. He has the 7-6-5-5 deuce. So he also flopped the nut straight, but ends up filling up on the river. And he takes down the main pot. We actually don't lose too much, probably about 25-30 bucks by winning the side pot. What's up, everyone? Just taking a quick second to let everyone know that I'm going to be back at Venetian next month. That's Friday, February 21st from 2 to 10. We're going to be playing the PLO mix you guys have seen featured here in many vlogs. That's a round of PLO, round of Big O, and a round of $10 PLO bomb pots with a $10 small blind jackpot. So if you're interested in getting on the list, let me know. You can either comment down below or shoot me a text. I'll put my number up on the screen, and I'll be sure to get you on there. Looking forward to seeing you guys out there. All right, let's get back into the video. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at the ace queen jack 8-3 double suited middle position. The straddle is on, as it is in most hands. The small blind makes it 30. Big blind calls, and I would really like the hand a lot better if the 3 was more connected, but I still call anyway, and another player calls as well. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes out 8-8-4 rainbow. The original raiser bets 70 over to me with just under a pot size raise. I put everything in the middle. Back over to him. He doesn't waste too much time before making the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings a 10 of spades, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. The river does bring in the backdoor flush, but it's the queen of spades. So I fill up, I turn it over, and we're good. So get a nice double up here in the early going at the second table. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at the queen 10, 8-7-6 double suited in the small blind. Now, because of the fact that everyone gets 5 cards with the burns, there's not enough cards to put out 2 full boards. So their bomb pots here are 1 flop, 2 turns, and 2 rivers. We go to a flop of 6-6-3 rainbow. I think a bit and bet 100. Over to a short stack who calls for less. The late position player also makes the call. So we're going 3 ways to a couple turns. The turn to bring a 4 of clubs on the top and 4 of spades on the bottom. Now, in putting my opponent on a hand, I either put him on a hand similar to mine or a hand that contained a 6 with a straight draw of some sort. So if he did have that, he either filled up on this card or hit a straight. So I end up checking back, but he ends up checking back as well. So still going 3 ways to a couple rivers. I'm looking to fill up on the river here, at least one of them. The rivers bring a king of hearts on the top and jack of diamonds on the bottom. So swing and a miss there. I end up checking. The late position player now bets 225, which really feels like value. I don't know if I can call here. I mean, I guess now the best hand I beat is 6-10, but obviously 6 king had me beat, but now feels confident that he filled up on one board. 6 jack I was beating, but is now beating me. So I end up folding. The late position player ends up turning over the jack 10, 8-8-6. So he did hit the jack on the river, and the short stack player ends up turning over the king, queen 10 deuce. So he needed a miracle on the river and got it, and they end up chopping it up here. About 30 minutes after the previous hand, I look down at the queen jack 10, 10, 7 double suited in the small blind in a straddled pot. I call. There are a couple other limpers. Cutoff then makes it 50. The button calls, I call, and there are 2 calls behind. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes out 10-9-7 rainbow, and sitting with an under 2-1 SPR here with top set, with the open-ended straight draw. Obviously not going to go anywhere here, so I bet 200, obviously going to call off any potential raises, and everyone folds. So potentially could have gotten someone to fold the 8-6 as I played it pretty strong, but happy to take down another pot here. About an hour after the previous hand, I looked down at the ace queen 9-6-5 double suited in middle position. This is again a bomb pot, 1 flop, 2 turns, 2 rivers. We go to a flop of 8-5-3 with 2 diamonds. When action checks to the under the gun player, he puts his remaining 105 in the middle, folds over to me, and never folding with his hand, so it's either call or raise. I consider raising, but decided on just calling here with the middle pair, nut flush draw, nut gutter, and backdoor flush draw. 2 other callers behind, and we're going 4 ways to a couple turns. The turns bring a 7 of clubs on the top and 3 of clubs on the bottom. So we make the nut straight on the top. Don't really like the board pair on the bottom, as I could be drawing down on that board. But when it checks to me, I decide to bet the full pot of 620. The middle position player to my left ends up shoving over the top for more. The late position player calls all in for less, and of course I call it off as well. So we're going 4 ways to a couple rivers. The rivers bring a king of hearts on the top and ace of hearts on the bottom. Me and the player to my left are on the side. I turn over my hand. He ends up turning over his. He has the king, jack, jack, 10-3. So he's got trips on the bottom, which is good for half of the side pot. The button ends up turning over the 10-8-4 deuce deuce. So he rivered the wheel. So we are going to chop it up with him. About 30 minutes after the previous hand, I look down at the ace-ace 10-9 deuce, double suited on the button with the $10 straddle on. There are 4 limpers. I make it 30 and everyone calls. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. The flop comes out ace, king, jack, rainbow, and everyone checks over to me. And in thinking about my different options here, I just wanted to quickly go over the 2 biggest differences I see between 5 card and 4 card, besides the obvious. The biggest difference I see is that I feel it's the best to play very defensive in this game. The equities just run so much closer, so you are going to be up against the nuts a lot more times. When you flop the nuts straight in 5 card compared to 4 card, you are going to be up against another person that also has the same straight as you a lot of times, and it's really going to come down to your redraws, where if your redraws aren't that strong, it's a good idea to take a free card and kind of shorten the hand when you could potentially be an equity underdog. Then similar to that, really the equities just run so close. If you don't have a good poker calculator, I really recommend getting one. The best and only one that I know of is called Poker Calc. That's CALC, right off the App Store. So it has 5 card high. It also has 5 card high low. So I would really just recommend running the equities on some of these biggest hands you play, and you'll just see how much that extra card really makes a difference. So that's just my long-winded way of saying that I ended up checking this flop, and we're still going 5 ways to a turn. The turn brings a 5 of clubs, checks over to the big blind who bets 100, over to a middle position player. He only has 135 left. He puts everything in the middle, and over to me. Obviously with the raise being 135 over 100, it's not opened up. Had it been, I probably would have folded here, but for 135, I decide to call and try to hit my boat on the river. The big blind, of course, makes the call as well, and we're going 3 ways to a river. The river brings a 3, so it doesn't really change much here. The big blind ponders a second, but puts everything in the middle, and I quickly fold. He ends up turning over the queen, queen, 10, 6, 4, so he did flop the straight, and he's going to take this one down.
What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So today for the 2 sessions, I played about 6 hours. I was in for 800, out for 1810, so a profit of 1010. And had you been following along with my posts I made on here, you would have seen that I didn't do too well in tournaments last month. I stone bubbled the Big O tournament. I actually soft bubbled another 3 or 4, so wasn't the best results, but I was happy that at least when I got down to the soft bubble, you're going to usually get in a situation when you get down to the soft bubble, obviously everyone is playing tight, trying to make the money, and there were certain spots where I could have folded and kind of limped into the money, but I really went for it, trying to build a stack to put myself in the best position to win the tournament. And of course, sometimes you do that and it's not going to work out. So, really this experience led Josh and I to have a conversation regarding tournaments versus cash. And although tournaments are definitely a lot more fun than cash, especially for me these days, cash is king, as they say, and it's just a lot more consistent. So we determined that either 75-25 or 80-20 in favor of cash is really the correct ratio. So moving forward, we're going to focus more so on cash and obviously just save tournaments for the World Series. So you're going to see me play cash a lot more often. I might even go back to my old stomping grounds like Elsinore next week. Obviously, I'll be at Venetian next month and really every month for the rest of the year. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And if you haven't seen the previous video, I'll go ahead and link it up here. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.